Hello and welcome to WNHH Radio's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. Justin Elicker is looking to make New Haven tick as our next mayor, and he's graciously made time in the schedule to come to the WNHH studio to update us on how his quest is going. Hi, Justin.
Hey, Paul, how are you?
Good. So any news coming out of your effort to gather signatures to have your name appear on the September 10th Democratic Party primary ballot for mayor?
Sure. So as you know, we technically need just under 2,000 signatures to qualify to get on the ballot. And your paper reported last night that we had reached 2,000. Of course, as we know, some of those signatures will end up getting thrown out because people can't read the handwriting, or someone may think they're a Democrat, but they're not, or someone may have moved and so they can't find the registration. So we're still working to collect probably about 1,000 more signatures.
So you feel you need a 50% cushion?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of an estimate, but we like to play it safe.
They were tough in the old days. I remember petitioning for third-party presidential candidate in 1980, and there were the reputation in some of the offices where they find excuses not to use them, like if someone wrote Anthony when they registered to vote, they wrote Tony when they came in. Mm-hmm. In Georgia, I think it was, if there's like a middle initial missing or not. New York State, they're tough. But I think here, you're going to be pretty safe with that cushion.
Yeah, I mean, also, this is about democracy. And so if anyone were to, there's a lot of information about each voter on each line. So it's pretty easy to track down and make sure that that voter is the right person. We can look up their date of birth or the address to make sure that if the handwriting is a little bit messy, you can figure out who wrote it. So my impression of the registrar of voters is they're going to play it straight.
It's pretty impressive. You did this in what, 3 days?
About, with 100-degree heat over the weekend. We put out a call to volunteers, and actually similar to in 2013 when we did this, it's a great opportunity to organize.
Yes.
People are fired up and excited, and
get you out there.
We had
to talk to people.
Yeah, we had over 100 people collecting signatures over the weekend.
Were they volunteers?
Yeah, the majority are volunteers, and some of our campaign staff too were out there collecting signatures.
So how many of those 100 people? How many were volunteers?
Probably 80 or 90.
And then the staff people,
it was a lot of a friend of mine would say, hey, how can I collect signatures? I'd give them a sheet to explain the rules, and they would drop off the petition at the office. So there were a ton of people around the city. And what was fun is that after a day or two, I was asking people to sign. I said, I've been asked 3 times today already. I was asked at the pool, and then I was asked downtown, and that's a real good sign that we were out in the
people over
community.
for dinner Friday. Some had been hit at their house on the way over, and then someone came to our door while we were having dinner, and they got the resisting. It is a fun process gathering signatures. It's hard, and it's amazing to me is how many weeks do you get to gather them?
I think it's just under 3.
That's incredible. You're not allowed to start months in advance. You have to wait till the party convention, and then you have under 3. And I mean, obviously you're organized. You got 100 people, but with that number, it's like not as easy as it sounds. And people, remember there was a guy running for probate judge who it turned out they hire companies to come in and they fabricate them. Right. Now, you didn't hire any outside companies.
No.
Just your staff and that's pretty impressive.
Exactly. And it's, you're right, it's hard. I think your reporter that followed me around on, I guess it was Saturday morning, she saw firsthand that, particularly walking around downtown, it's maybe 1 out of 10 people that gets you a signature.
Because a lot of them don't live there? Or
or there's Republicans or unaffiliated or don't want to be bothered on the street, which is understandable. But the nice thing I like about it is that generally during these campaigns, we reach out to Democrats. And this is an opportunity for us to talk to anyone. Mm-hmm. And I met a number of people that were unaffiliated, and they said they wanted to change their registration to Democrat so they could vote in this election. And it's just a good opportunity to get a broader sense of what people feel
door
like
to
in the
door.
community.
So you had some people, let's say, go to Lighthouse. I'm sure it was packed. You were downtown on a street. Other people knocked on doors, which takes longer, but you have a higher yield, correct? If you go to the doors, you're probably going to get someone who lives there, so a higher chance of someone who might be a voter. But it's just going to take a longer hour. You're not going to get as many people in an hour. Right. So I guess it's both, right? It's not either or.
Yeah, we decided very intentionally to divide up the groups and have some people go door to door, and then some people just kind of cast the net wide, go to coffee shops or walk around downtown. And generally the returns were better in busy places and not door to door, because you end up, it depends on time of day. I do remember going
to concerts and stuff.
Yeah. Like I went to the Manjares 10th year anniversary.
Oh, you must have gotten everybody there.
And I got 2 pages worth of signatures.
And
about
50
40.
on a page, right?
Yeah. No, 20 on a page.
Oh, 20 a page. Okay.
But once you start to work on this, you realize that 2 full pages worth is really good, because it's hard to get these many.
What was your favorite moment out asking people to sign your petitions? Your favorite interaction, or just it doesn't have to be the favorite. Give me a fun story from this.
I really enjoyed talking with people that there was a couple of people that were unaffiliated, but really they'd been following the race, and they decided to register as Democrat because they wanted a voice in the primary. And it's exciting to see people that are interested in New Haven and excited about the future of New Haven, that have been following things, to see them proactively do something that generally is pretty difficult to get people to do. That's change their party or register with the party if they've decided not to register with the party.
And were you able to change their registration for them there?
Yeah. Okay. So with voter registration, you can, the forms, I have one here, Paul, if you'd like to change.
I am a Democrat.
I know.
Okay.
But
I used to be independent.
You can pretty quickly have them fill out a form and change the registration. Then we bring it to the registrar of voters.
What was the funniest put down you got? Not necessarily personal. Not necessarily
I got a lot of,
just people don't like politicians.
There was a lot of people that said, I don't do politics, not interested. I wish you had asked me beforehand what the funniest put down is, because I could have thought about it.
Doesn't have to be the funniest.
But there were many people that.
So what do you say?
It's really, it's sad. It's sad that there's so many people, particularly downtown, just didn't want to have anything to do with politics.
Mm. So what do you tell them? Why should they care about politics?
Yeah, I say, look what's going on at the national level. We can make a difference by voting, and change so much of people not getting attention by making sure that more people are registered to vote. And some people just, I think, hear that and feel like, oh, it's just another political person asking me to vote, and then they're going to disappear after election time.
And that's definitely the thing you have to meet up with. When you talk about people downtown, so people live downtown or hang out downtown?
And so it's a whole combination of people.
Because that's now the biggest voting ward. Ward 7 wasn't true in the past.
Right. There's a lot of people at the bus stations that that I talked with, because that was kind of an area where there were just many more people, so it was easier to find.
Well, it's definitely the fun of politics. The people I saw of yours going around, this was like time to do something you believe in and go out and be active and try to make a difference, make something happen,
and meet people that you may never have had the opportunity to meet.
So it was sort of a blessing. If you gotten the nomination at the convention from the party, that would have been a great victory for you, since you weren't favored.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was a win-win night for you.
Yeah.
In your position you were in, because then you get to go out and sort of rally people.
Yeah. And frankly, we were expecting not to win for a long time. We always knew that it was a heavy lift, because it's a process that heavily benefits the incumbent.
Right. So, and what about issues on the street? So when you guys were going your women working for Justin Elicker, went door to door to get your name on the ballot with petitions, what issues did you hear about the most?
Affordable housing, youth programs for our free after school programs for our kids, taxes. It's, I don't think, surprising to anyone listening that those are the primary issues. And of course, there are schools is another one that comes up pretty frequently.
I will talk about schools later. Tell me if I have the Justin Elicker position on this correct. You've embraced a number of ideas in the affordable housing task force came up with, such as mother-in-law apartments, where you have kind of smaller apartments built on more easily, and
I think
more
technically it's accessory dwelling units.
Does that mean the mother-in-law apartment?
Yeah.
Okay. And also, so more density we can build on more easily, and have requirements when developers build.
Correct.
Is that any developer, or just someone who gets public approvals?
I think the devil's in the details here, and we need to make sure that we're not inappropriately damaging New Haven's ability to attract investment. But what's been done in Stanford, Washington, D.C., New York, Boston, with what it's called inclusionary zoning, where developments above a certain number of units are required to have a percentage of affordable housing, or in some cases pay into an affordable housing fund that can subsidize affordable housing elsewhere. What's interesting about this issue is that in 2013, when I ran for mayor, affordable housing didn't come up often. Affordable housing comes up all the time now, and that's an indication to me. 41% of New Haven is housing insecure, which means that people are paying more than a third of their income on housing. That's an indication to me that we have a real problem in the city with accessibility of affordable units. And I was listening to your comments on WNPR yesterday.
Yeah,
and we absolutely need development in the city. The development gives us building permit fees, which are a significant source of revenue for the city. And of course, they give us tax dollars
in 5 years. Yeah.
Correct. Well, it's kind of phased in. And so that's critical to the city. But cities are so hot now, and New Haven and Connecticut is probably the most so as far as attracting development, that we can't have development without making sure that people struggling in the community are able to stay in the city. And so while you were right in your comments yesterday, and you can reiterate them if you want, that that development is important. Affordable housing is a significant component of our ability to offer accessible housing for everyone. And I also think it's important that it's not just one neighborhood in the city that has high rents and then another neighborhood that has lower rents. That's not the kind of city that we should be. And so with so many buildings coming into downtown, we want downtown to be a mixed, economically mixed place where people live. And that's why I think that component is important.
My 2 points yesterday wasn't a criticism of anybody. Was that my point was that I think it's hard to talk about in a political context. Because I actually completely agree with you. Tony Harp agrees with you. People are very concerned about affordable housing, and they have every reason to be. They're right. Your 41% figure, they're right. It's hard to make the rent in New Haven. My point was that what's the solution? It's kind of hard. It's a little bit above my pay grade, even though I read about this stuff every day. Because there are people, let's say Mark Abraham from Data Haven, who believe that you should have no restrictions requiring affordable housing because the market works it out. That the more of this market rate housing you build, the more supply you have, so other rents actually go down. Or I think there's this other proviso. Sometimes there's pressure for other landlords to up the quality of the housing, so they put money into fixing housing, which we want, but that does raise rents. My other point was, so I don't know who's right about that. Like, I would have voted for rent control in California, but there are a lot of people who care about affordable housing who say that then people won't build as much. You'll have less supply, so you'll actually have less affordable housing. I believe that's on the theoretical reign. And on the ground, we know from generations in New York that rent control has been crucial for having affordable housing. But I'm just saying this stuff's kind of complicated because we all agree we want more affordable housing. How do you get there? You talked about inclusionary zoning. You mentioned Washington, D.C. I asked Tony Harp about this. I was so interested because what they do there is there are different ways of trying to get 20% into housing development. So we've had some success with that, right? We have the 360 State. You talk about downtown. Some of those floors are public housing.
Right. That was 10 years ago.
Yeah. You weren't all there at the time.
Right.
Randy Salvador's project in the Hill, I believe that's 20% affordable housing, correct? So they had to get state, federal money for that, which is not as plentiful as it was before. So, and you look at Munson Street. So you're having a big 200-unit development there. That's going to be market rate on vacant land where nobody's living. So does that get rid of affordable housing, or does it get more customers for Kay's Hair Place and the coffee shop around the corner to hire more people so they can make a rent? And down the street, one block, you have the old Joe Great's lot, which is going to be dozens of affordable homes built by Beulah Land. So it's kind of what Washington does is they say, rather than us trying to get you subsidies from the federal government, your idea about a certain number of units, you have to then charge a surcharge to your market rate units to pay for the lower rent units.
Correct.
So my only point is that there are a lot of different ways to approach it, as you said, and that we're not always clear that the solutions make it better or worse. The way Chef versus O'Neill was supposed to make more integrated schools have sometimes forced our schools to be less integrated.
I think the key is the mixed city, right? Because in other places where there's been significant gentrification, people have been pushed out of wherever they live to other places. And so requiring affordable units with new developments, and you're right about the devil being in the detail, is it development projects above 10 units, above 20 units? What percentage is deeply affordable? Because there's affordable in our kind of traditional terminology is a family that's earning $70,000, and
right.
For New Haven, it's $37,000 is the median income, so that's ridiculous for a huge percentage of New Haven.
Yeah.
But I don't the sort of trickle down theory about if we have a lot more development, people will be buying more things. While
that's
I think
true.
That's not always true. It's been proven it's not always true.
But I-Square, it's good. I-Square is between 40 to 60% affordable housing. That whole play we built, depending on what year you're looking at the stats, that's been a good thing.
Yeah, but we also gave a development company. We kind of wrote them a blank check to this is a major development company that has sort of billions and billions of dollars and has incredible investments in New York and
related.
Yeah, correct. So the same company that we let off the hook, right? Because they were tanking. There's a lot of articles in the Independent. There's some articles in the Independent about it. And I think that was a real lost opportunity for us to really push the envelope on expecting developers to do more. And
but
again,
bottom
I think
line, what about the people who say that just letting people build as much market housing as they want will actually get us more affordable housing by putting more units on the market, and the market corrects itself, like our condo boom?
I think we haven't seen the results of that yet. And there's been how many new units that have come online in the last 10 years?
Yeah.
Well,
the 80s condo boom went bust, and most of those units became affordable to middle class housing because it was overbuilt.
So just to add to the conversation, we often require affordable housing when the city has skin in the game. 360 State is an example. We own that parcel.
Or downtown.
Yeah. So we could require them to have affordable housing. The project that's on Chapel Street, that there's a discussion of having a small percentage of affordable housing in that coming up. But so if we do that in every circumstance where the city has skin in the game, why aren't we doing that with opportunities where the city doesn't own the parcel? And that's what inclusionary zoning does, is it allows us to expand and share in the burden, if you will, from developers and offering affordable housing. So it makes it a little bit easier for us to even help the city projects get developed, because it's not just those projects. There's not so much pressure on a 360 State Street to have affordable housing because we're spreading it across the board with new developments.
All right, and Justin Elicker running for mayor.
And there's just one other interesting thing about this, and that's the number of houses in particular that are being bought up across the city by outside developers or outside property managers. And that's a trend. There's been interesting articles in the New York Times about it. That's a trend that's happening around the nation too, where there's outside money coming in to buy up a lot of the houses. And there's a speculative investment component.
We've been writing about a lot of that, but a lot of that's actually with low-income housing with Section 8 subsidy. There has been tens of $millions a year, Tom Breen has quantified it, coming into the spin-off management companies that then form partnerships for each large Section 8 building in poor neighborhoods, New Hallville, Fairhaven, The Hill, Dixwell, West Rock, and West Hills, and they've been buying up just tons of property every week with like people from Australia, Israel, Florida, New York. Tens of millions of dollars a year come in on that. That's a completely different animal because that is low-income housing, but a lot of it's poorly maintained.
Right. So I think it's very connected to this affordable housing question, because if we're not offering affordable housing that's safe, then we're not effectively offering.
And your
housing.
idea there was you would hire more inspectors.
Yeah, and I think be more rigid about the inspection regime, because I've heard too many stories of certain property owners getting let off the hook because it appears that they know someone or they have a relationship.
But on the ground, we have 25,000 units to inspect, and only 6,000 are licensed, and those tend to be the people who we don't need to worry about because they've signed up for the licensing program. They're talking about making changes. Would you change anything?
Correct. So I would more aggressively pursue fines. When someone's given a landlord's been given an opportunity to fix a problem multiple times and they don't, we need to start fining them.
And where would you get the money from our housing inspectors?
So that's a revenue source that allows us to pay for more inspectors.
All right. And I got some comments here. I forgot my glasses. Preston Wilson joined. Hi, Preston. Thanks for listening. Nicole, you can't even get into 360 building. What a joke. Patricia Kane has the Democracy Fund. Just so our listeners know, that's our public finance system. We're the only city that has in the state. You can opt in to get public money for your campaign if you agree to limit how much you raise from people and don't allow special interests like people have contracts with the city to give money to you. Democracy Fund. Justin's participating. His opponent is not. Has the Democracy Fund allowed the candidate more time to meet the people?
Yes. I mean, I spend.
Thank you for the question, Pat.
I spend a lot of my time reaching out to people to donate, and as probably many people that have been following the election at home know, there's matching funds with the Democracy Fund as an incentive for candidates to participate in the fund. And the spirit behind the fund is to get PAC money and
Political Action Committee,
and individuals that have a financial interest in the city to stop them from influencing government. And my opponent is collecting $1,000 checks from major contractors. There's been articles in the Independent about that, and my campaign can't collect more than a $390 check from any individual, and we can't take political action funds money. And so because of the matching funds, it incentivizes us to reach out to people that might only be able to donate $25 to the campaign, or even $10. And a $10 donation becomes, with the Democracy Fund match, a $30 donation, because they double match the first $30 of the donation. And so that's, you look at the I think we've gotten so far about 1,200 people donating to our campaign, which is a really significant number of people. And that's an opportunity for us to have more conversations with people, but it's also an opportunity to get more people engaged in politics, because if people pay a little bit because they're excited about a campaign, they're more likely to follow it and be interested in the outcomes.
All right. And I want to ask you about an independent run. So in New Haven, the Democratic primary in some elections have become a runoff, sort of. It's not a runoff, the first round. And then because we have so many independents, then we have over 16,000 independents now in New Haven compared to 38,800 Democrats registered. Correct. And -4 Republicans. Are you going to run in this November election on the independent line?
So I plan on winning the primary. Mm-hmm. But I will run it in the general as well.
So have you submitted those petitions?
Not yet.
When are those due?
Same time.
So when are you going to collect those?
We will do it shortly.
But you haven't started that?
No, because it takes a little bit more time. You have to go to the Capitol to get the paperwork, so it takes a little bit more time.
And can the same person sign both?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So when do you start to do that?
It's a really low threshold, which is an interesting question. By the way,
I know, it's really interesting.
It's a 150 people or something
so
like
you'll
that,
do that
compared to the 2,000 for the Democratic primary.
So what is the thinking there? They're supposed to be the person. I always felt like there was this duopoly where Republicans and Democrats make the laws, and their campaign laws are always made in their own interest. Not come this for bias, because in 1980 I was involved with third parties, and we were lobbying legislature because you used to have to get a lot more signatures. Right. I think it's 0.5% now. It used to be like 5%. 5% of the registered voters you need for a statewide election.
Wow.
We spent all summer getting a presidential candidate on the ballot, like tens of thousands of signatures. But they're making the rules so it's harder for someone to get a party nomination if the party leaders haven't decreed they should be.
Our nation has a long history of the people in power protecting themselves and using their influence to disenfranchise the people that are not in power.
So people like us have always spent our lives talking about machines and backroom deals and undemocratic processes, from the John Bailey era to the Arthur Burberry in New Haven. It's not quite like what it was, but because of reforms after Watergate that had primaries more possible and stuff. But there's an argument, some people say that something's been lost when there's less central control. We saw that in the arguments about Hillary Clinton versus Bernie Sanders, when party leaders wrongly thought they'd have a much better chance of winning if Hillary was the candidate, so they thought that was in the interest of a broader party rather than a group that gets unrepresentatively influential in a primary, which is the activist base of each party. So they're saying that something's lost when you don't have a central deal maker in a back room who brings factions together, gets compromise, and has a common platform everyone runs on. Then the outsiders say, I've always been outsider, that it's less democratic and it just protects the interests of people on the inside and makes government more transactional rather than having the best public outcome. But are they right at all that having the loss of any kind of ability of a party organizers and leaders to determine their platform and candidates has some loss?
I don't think so, as long as we respect the institutions that exist, right? So if we have a free press and people have accurate information, then the public is, I believe, in a much better position than a small group of people to determine what the outcome should be. and
Okay.
who their leadership should be.
I want to catch up with some of these comments coming in. Juwan Carter, key statement: people in power will make rules to remain in power. Yes, I believe that one's inscribed in stone somewhere from the 3rd century. Thank you very much for your comments, Juwan. Always appreciate when you're listening to Dateline New Haven, which everyone's listening to here at 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. We're with Justin Elicker. He's running for mayor and has already collected 2,000 and counting signatures in just a bunch of days to get his name on the September 10th Democratic Party ballot.
My campaign manager and I are having a competition of who collects more signatures.
And who's winning?
Who do you think?
Him.
No, I'm actually doing a little bit better. And I'm raising money and doing debates at the same time. So, Gage, pick it up a bit.
Catriella Medina Knight. How you doing, Catriella? Nice to hear from you. The homeless services really need to be revised here. Change in many ways is what this beautiful city I love needs. That's why I stand behind you, Justin. Brett Ilhan Hoover. If you become mayor, will you hold the city schools and fire and police to the same resident hiring standards, including target neighborhoods, that is expected of Yale? Brett, thank you for that question. There's going to be a legal part of this answer.
I didn't understand that is expected from Yale.
Yale's being
question.
told hire 1,000 local people, including 500 from neighborhoods. Are you the same to have the schools and fire and police departments to hire more people from New Haven?
As much as we can. There's legal limitations around how much, and we've been sued in the past for this.
We've lost.
Correct.
And we've lost at the state. There's a state law. We can't tell cops or teachers or firefighters. We can do it with department heads. So the people you appoint,
correct,
you're going to have to tell them to pretend they live here and buy an apartment, rent an apartment here that they keep empty or rent out if they want to work for you.
Correct. And I think
that was a joke. You're not really going to do that,
right? Sorry, I was thinking about my actual response to this question. I think that the spirit of it is what's important. We want police officers and firefighters and teachers to live in New Haven. We want to recruit more of our own. And the question is, how do we logistically do that? And there's a number of ways to do that. The requirement is something that we've been sued on and lost. We've given more points to help particular police and fire on the exam be more competitive, and I think that's something that is good. I think there's 2 other strategies to do this. One is with incentives. So the Yale Home Buyers model is an example of how we could attract more police and fire and teachers if we give them some incentive.
We've done some of that with Livable City Initiative. We got firefighters have bought houses. Mm-hmm. One guy met 2 blocks from his fire station on Howard Avenue. Yeah.
Right, and then the other side is creating a pipeline for New Haven residents to get these jobs, and that starts in public schools. So, for example, the Firebirds have over the years off and on gotten significant and not significant support from the city to help inspire young people in our high schools and give them some training to feed into the fire department. And I think that we need to do more of that type of work. More paraprofessionals live in our city, and we should be creating a pipeline and partnership with Southern. I mean, I taught at Southern in the education department there. And the number of individuals from New Haven in my classes, I taught for 5 semesters, and these were the majority of the students in my classes were going to be teachers. Number of New Haven residents out of 25 students was maybe 3, 4 in each class.
And of course, there's a challenge that we don't have enough teachers of color.
Exactly. So
you're saying get the paraprofessionals in the pipeline.
Correct.
And that's a really good idea. Can I open to any other suggestions?
Yeah, go for it.
Yale hasn't done a major initiative in New Haven for 10 years.
I know.
What if they were to expand the home buyer program where they give people down payment assistance up to $25,000 over 5 years to teachers and cops?
So I would
live in New Haven.
I like this idea. One correction is Yale is in the midst of doing a significant initiative in New Haven with the jobs that they're.
That's not initiative. That was demand from the community to hire more local people. I'm talking about when they came up with a plan. Promised to New Haven.
They have not completed the goal, but I think that's
But that's not an initiative. That's a response to.
Correct. They're not as proactive about doing it themselves.
When Rick Levin came in as president, and they said you have to do more at the city, they came up with the home buyer initiative that really stabilized neighborhoods and got working class people living in New Haven. When 10 years ago, they did Promise New Haven with the Board of Ed and the city and the Community Foundation, and they said, how are we going to get more of our kids to college and succeed when they're in college? And it wasn't just we'll give some money or we'll answer yes on a market. What are we going to do with policy and some money combined to actually build the city's future.
But my point on the initiative is that it's not like Yale does that in a vacuum.
Right.
There's leadership on the city, or there should be leadership on the city's side, City Hall's side, to benefit us and benefit Yale, and Promise and Yale's investment in the Economic Development Corporation and Yale Home Buyers. There was a collaboration with the city on that side too. So it was, a nudge on both sides.
All right.
But I like your idea.
And you're listening to Dateline New Haven, WNHH 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. Justin Elicker wants to be our next mayor. He's collecting signatures already, has 2,000 and counting to get his name on the September 10th primary
If
ballot.
you're in the area, I'll be outside in about 20 minutes or so.
That's right, because you got to keep staying ahead of Gage Frank, your campaign manager, and get more names.
I know.
Yeah.
Outside of 200 Orange Street, so come on by.
Last night, Justin, there was a controversial 5.5-hour hearing at City Hall about naming people to the Civilian Review Board. Activists are mad with the Harp administration because in addition to naming activists who are critical police, they named a retired police officer named Bob Proto to nominate, and a filmmaker named Steve Hammond, a writer, who was accused last night of being a, quote, centrist because he didn't use the word structural racism. And I think there was a more underlying debate about what should the Civilian Review Board be? Should it just be people who are critical of police? Should that be the qualifying identity for them? Or should it be people who have a variety of experiences? Or should it be people, one person said last night, well, you haven't lived in our skin and know what it's like to be scared to go down the street or be hassled by a cop, so you can't really sit there and judge us. Who's right?
I think it's a combination. I think the most important thing for the success of the Civilian Review Board is its legitimacy now. And if it's perceived as not being legitimate, then it's not going to be successful.
But there's still a disagreement about how to perceive that. There are people who say, well, this group of activists who are doing good work on this, that they just want to have people with one point of view on it. And the activists said, we want people with certain kind of lived experience, and only that. We don't want someone who was involved in raids.
I would say it needs to be both. And I think the one, and I haven't looked into the individuals in depth as far as their qualifications and their backgrounds, but the one thing when I was reading the paper this morning, the one thing that concerned me about the choice of Proto is his history of being accused of a civil rights, and it's alleged, right? There was a settlement, but of a civil rights violation. Is that correct? And so that, I think, takes away from some of the potential legitimacy.
And then other people say, well, you had other activists in there who have committed a lot of crimes. One guy tried to run over cops. He also got shot at by cops in a terrible incident, so he has reason to understand what it's like. But he tried to run over cops, and he went to jail for crimes. So is the idea that if it's someone who's not a cop who committed a crime, that gives them some insight into the criminal justice system? But if it's a cop who's made a mistake, that sort of shows that there's someone we don't want on there? Or is that an unfair double standard?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I think it depends on the individual case. But I do think that there should be strong, there should be people that have a history, and I'm not against someone from the police department being on.
Well, that's
ex-cop, not existing cop, obviously. But it's about the group, right? I was on a jury, I guess it was about 10 months ago, and it was a really interesting. It wasn't it was a trip and fall, or a
slip and fall.
It wasn't a slip and fall. It was someone rear-ended someone else.
Because slip and fall, you might be getting quite versed in that if you win this election. You thought it was all the glory, man. It's slip and fall.
But what was important, I think there were seven people on the jury. What was important is that there were a group of people that had a lot of different perspectives, and people that were willing to have a voice in the room. And I think that we came to a better understanding of the problem because there was a group that came to a different perspective. What I think is important is that not only you have people coming from lots of different backgrounds, but people that are interested in actually getting to the truth.
And showing up at meetings, which has always been the problem.
Correct.
Jaywan Carter writes in with a really interesting perspective on this. CRB is created only because Internal Affairs is police only. Police commissioners are police affiliated. If those two entities were working correctly, the CRB would not be formed. So that would be the argument for it's okay to tilt it to people who are more critical because we have all these other institutions protecting the police.
I think it's an argument that it's not. I mean, there's no requirement that the police commission, which has oversight over a lot of these things, is police officers. I agree that the internal affairs is like the is it the fox guarding the hen house in a way? Maybe that's not the best terminology.
Well, I had a case before Internal Affairs when our photographer was arrested, and I thought the police were completely wrong. And the Internal Affairs person who did the investigation, I was very friendly with the police officer who was being investigated, and I thought she did a great job. I completely agreed with the way she investigated and all the facts she put together. And it was a higher up, who now supports your campaign, who rewrote the report and said that even though all the facts showed that department policies were violated and this was wrong, because the officer didn't lie but could have, and said that she acted for a different reason that would have been okay, they're exonerated. So I actually don't think the problem's Internal Affairs as much as whether police leadership is willing to be self-critical or is always going to cover up for cops that is wrong. And I agree, it's a good criticism you're making that how do police investigate themselves, and I've sometimes been really impressed with the Internal Affairs people who are professionals. I had a case I'm staring face to face with an investigator I know is friendly with the other person, does not agree with where it's coming from, and she was such a professional. I felt that she came up with a set of facts that everyone could agree on. And then it was her boss who then I felt did something really sleazy in protecting the cop.
So I appreciate that. It's one anecdote. And there's overwhelming evidence that people prefer other people because they have an affinity to them, that we have subliminal, everyone has subliminal bias.
They rarely take action. My question was whose fault is that? Is it IA or is it the people above IA?
I think that inherently when the police are investigating the police, there is a more likely potential for bias, even though the police might not even think that they're biased.
Well, I think we would agree on that. I think the community agrees on that, which is why they want a civilian review board.
Correct.
Okay, we got agreement on that one. Tell me about schools.
All right.
There's a lot of controversy with Carol Burks, the superintendent. I know you're not saying, which I actually respect this, Justin. You've made a real point of saying, we'll see if you hold on to this through your whole race. You're not going to start threatening the way one of the candidates does. I'm going to fire this person, hire that person. I'm going to promise a job, or I'm going to make sure I'm going to clear the deck of all these fools, as though you know how they're doing their jobs from firsthand.
Your word, not mine.
Yeah, you're saying, no, that's the word they use. Fools.
Yeah,
you're saying that you are not, am I correct that you're saying that you're not calling to fire anyone by name or any one position, and you're not talking about committing to hiring any particular person?
I think it gets too personal to have that conversation, and this election has already gotten a little bit too personal, and that we need to focus on the issues. And once you start saying someone's name or someone else's name, it becomes very problematic.
So how do we deal with the school issue? Because it is a big issue, and Carol Brooks was brought in. There was a lot of popular opposition to that. I always felt like we shouldn't have had such a public process, but I know I've heard you say that. I know there are good arguments against that as well, and there's something anti-democratic in my saying that. So I'm not saying I'm right, but I'm saying once she was here, all of a sudden the people who brung her to the dance were opposing her pretty early on, and there's a lot of controversy. 3 superintendents in 3 years, and she seems to be out the door. What would you do different?
Yeah, so I heard the mayor's comments on yesterday's WNPR interview about the problems that are going on at the Board of Education. And the mayor, in my interpretation of what the mayor said, is was blaming a certain group of people that didn't want the superintendent to be there in the first place.
Well, her board also, and she have spoken out against the superintendent as well.
Well, her comments yesterday were basically saying that the superintendent is not successful because there's a group of people that were never happy with her in the first place and just won't let go. And I think that is a huge misrepresentation of what's going on and really unfair to what's a broadening group of people that are showing up at public hearings. And it's not just the handful of people that
well, the board that brought her, the majority that voted to hire her
Correct.
said it was a mistake, and they wish they hadn't hired her.
Correct. And
that's really deep.
You look at what's yeah.
That's deep. They had a hard time wrestling the 4 to the ground to show up. They brought a phone to someone's house to have them vote remotely.
Right.
All 4 of them said, "Now we shouldn't have voted that way."
Right.
What do we do now?
I think that the board needs to hold the superintendent accountable, and I'm trying to play this fine line.
You sure are.
Yeah,
as is the mayor.
And you're playing your job of really pushing you
to take a stand.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to take a stand on Carol Burks, I deeply respect that. How should they keep her?
I will say that it's very difficult at this point to find a path forward that's actually going to successfully or lead to success in our schools if we continue with what we're doing now.
I mean, she's gone. The question is going to be before the
correct.
And again, I remove that from any criticism or support of Carol Burks. I just think the die is cast and it's all political. But
no, it's not all political though. I mean, I don't think you can slide that in, because you look at what's happened. I mean, there was an article in your paper yesterday afternoon about one of her employees having a lot lot of criticisms about workplace harassment.
Workplace, and that's not the only top officials sued her.
We have lost employee after employee after employee from administrative level to people that have been positions that have been eliminated and people that have been laid off as well. And those are not political. And so I agree that there's politics in all this, but
how you can deal with the politics? You don't control the board, Ed. If you win your first year, I guess it is, you won't have appointed a majority. Half the two members are elected, and that has injected politics into the like who gets contracts for whom and that kind of stuff.
Sure, and the appointed members inject politics into it too, right?
Right.
I think this came up at the Varick debate where the mayor said that we haven't had a CFO in a year and a half in the public school system. We had this budget crisis. And my response is the mayor is by charter on the Board of Education, appoints 4 other members. How is it that we should get a CFO and the board hasn't demanded this? The mayor said that the board didn't know how money was being spent. Well, if you're on a board, you can demand documents and you ultimately bear the responsibility for what's going on at the Board of Education. And so the mayor has a lot of influence over the board.
A year and a half ago.
There may be a time after I win where you're correct that the people that are on the board are not people that I appointed. But over time you can appoint people that have the right vision.
And one argument is that short of that, you can still show leadership. You're on the board, you're the
Correct.
mayor, you got cards to play. Other people
Correct.
say, quote, stay in your lane. So Mayor Harp did not have a lot of leverage her first couple terms. Then she said, I'm taking control now for her third term. She said, the board is now on me. I'm bringing in a superintendent. I got a majority of people. Now I'm going to take leadership. She was even board president for a year. John DeStefano, former mayor, Reggie Leo, criticized her for that and said, stay in your lane. That's not for a mayor to do. Who's right?
I don't understand
how active should a mayor be on the Board of Education?
I don't think the mayor should be the chair of the Board of Education, but the mayor by charter is on the Board of Education and should be active at managing the school system.
Justin Elicker here on WNHH 103.5 FM live stream, newhaven.org, Dateline New Haven. Justin, you've been critical of city management, of finances, so I'm going to give you this a little bit of a trick question. So be ready.
Okay. Thanks for the heads up.
Okay, so I'm going to try to.
I'll give you a trick answer then.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a hypothetical. So you're going to be, if you're the mayor, you're going to have 4,000 employees. Do you think it's possible that one of them might develop at a low-level position, might develop a drug problem?
Sure.
Do you think it's possible that one of those people might, and Cam Cooper says, good morning.
This does feel like a trick question.
It is a trick. I'm leading you to something specific. It's not
yeah.
hypothetical.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you think it's possible that one of these people who's struggling with drug problem, let's say that person's done really good work for 10 years, 15 years, and has a drug problem, and you kind of watch that, you're trying to help this person in different ways, and the person finds a way to grab a credit card and steal $11,000 to keep a place to live and eat, and you've discovered it, and you have the person arrested, you immediately get all the money paid, the city doesn't lose a cent.
Mm-hmm.
Would you have handled that some other way different? Because I am talking about a real case.
Yeah, I wouldn't have taken money from the fire department to close.
Okay, that's a different issue. That's $3,000.
I mean, that's related to that issue.
Meaning it's about just, if the person's not dressing well, you would have just said leave.
Yes, I wouldn't have taken money inappropriately for the city to dress an employee.
Well,
I mean, I don't know. I would not have just said leave. I think that's there's not as kind of one choice or the other.
So
I think that we have to have a compassion.
City Hall, right? Which was not a great use of $3,000. That was legitimately used and reimbursed. But
wait, so my understanding is that was not legitimately legitimately used. But
okay, but in any case, $3,000, $550 million budget. They got new uniforms for all the office, so that person wouldn't feel stuck out. Clearly didn't work. But this person separately then found a city credit card and stole $11,000. The city never lost a penny of it. The person was prosecuted and fired immediately. Why would the mayor be criticized for that?
So I've been talking about the inappropriate use of credit card funds, and there's a number of things about this. So
right, we did a story on that stuff that there wasn't, and we're gonna get to that with Escape. There were a lot of expenses that were not backed up with documentation of how they spent that credit card.
And I just want to clarify whether it was $3,000 or $3 million. And I understand that we should be more concerned in general about $3 million. But
no, we shouldn't misuse.
But there's inappropriate use of funds. There's inappropriate use of funds, and we should have an expectation that our city government uses taxpayer dollars appropriately.
Point well taken.
However, with the credit card information, so I ran the New Haven Land Trust for 5 years. The New Haven Land Trust continues to use the exact same program that the city uses to monitor credit card use. And this program is specifically designed for government use because you can limit exactly what different categories of usage for the credit card holders are. So, for example, you can say there's this huge list of different categories. You can say they're not allowed to buy sports tickets with this credit card, not allowed to make purchases on Amazon.
Summer was cut up. Yeah.
And you can, in an instant, pull up the report of the most recent transaction of all the transactions that the employees have used. And it's an excellent program for auditing employee spending. And the city should have been number one, catching inappropriate use of funds and have a better policy. They caught that after some time.
But they got the money. But you and I will agree on the big question because it was our reporting that became the basis of that FBI subpoena. No, I'm agreeing with you on the big question, and they acknowledged that. They screwed up. They were using those credit cards a lot. They didn't say how they spent it. They didn't have the documentation, and it was real money. So I'm agreeing with you on that. I was talking about, I do have a point of view that this one case to try to deal with someone who had a drug problem, who was a good employee in the past, and that no money was ever lost. I felt like that was beating up, and I thought it was racist. I thought it was a black woman.
Who raised that? Because I have not made that an issue.
Okay, maybe you not personally. I know
I have said multiple times that there's been misuse of credit card funds,
and there has been.
But I have never brought up and attacked that specific employee in that situation because I understand that there's a complicated issue, and this is not this is tangential, but what I think our entire country is experiencing now is that people know other people that have issues around drug use, particularly because of the opioid crisis. And more people than before are compassionate about this being a health problem and not a criminal problem.
Okay, I think we're fair then. We're on the same page on that one. The big money they spent and the not having any controls in place was a super problem. Everyone agrees with. It's now the subject of an FBI subpoena. That had to be fixed. Okay, and you're saying you're not taking a shot at that woman. Cam Cooper says what should have been recognized is the need the employee has. In such a position of mayor, you have to know your staff and their needs. Okay, the person was in the mayor's office and then downstairs. Alex Taubes.
And we can be compassionate without continuing to have an employee work for the city that is misusing funds.
And the second they found that out, they did arrest her and get rid of her. That happened that day.
Okay, I don't remember the exact
Alex Taubes says, Justin talks about elections getting personal, but on his Facebook page, you would think that Tony Hart used the credit card herself.
I would like Alex, who I know is a strong supporter of the mayor, to point out what the specific post is.
Yeah, because I'm not sure what the post he's referring to. I think you'll find managing 4,000 employees of the city is a bit harder than managing a trust credit card. So that's the argument that you ran a small organization. The city's a big organization.
No, that's an argument about credit cards. And the city has a very limited number of people that have credit cards. The Land Trust also has a very limited number of people that have credit cards. I don't recall the exact number of city employees, but it's something like 10 employees, correct? Is this what your recollection?
Right, yeah.
So I don't think that's a fair comparison. Now, Alex could raise that managing 4,000 employees is a different level, and I agree with that. But I also think that we've seen over the past 6 years and reelected the mayor of New Haven 3 times that we've seen how management of employees is going for the city. And ultimately, it's about surrounding ourselves with the right team of people and directors of departments that can manage well, too.
Are you having fun?
Yes. Most of the time.
I know it's no fun having your wife attacked, but separate from that, was this weekend the most fun when you guys were out meeting thousands of people and collecting thousands of signatures to get on the ballot?
There's a lot of most fun parts of the election.
I just get the sense the most you have fun is just talking to people.
I like knocking on doors and talking with random people.
You're going to be doing a lot more of that.
I am.
Folks, if you think you're getting an Amazon delivery, but it's Justin Elicker at your door, he's going to be asking you to sign up for democracy and get his name on the ballot for the September 10th Democratic primary for mayor and the November 5th general election. Not as big a lift getting on that ballot.
No.
Justin Elicker, thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks, Paul.
We had a very lively
Always
exchange.
good to chat.
And thanks everyone who sent in questions and comments. Awesome. You guys are the best listenership in the business. I also want to thank Harry Drost, the magician behind the scenes, who gets us on so many social media platforms. I'm never going to figure out who all the people are listening to us and how. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience, performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night. WNHH New Haven's home for community radio.